Hi everyone, and welcome back to another installment of our season-long lecture series, Behind the Music, where we take an inside look at the music you'll hear on North Carolina Symphony programs. This weekend, the Symphony will perform Mozart's Symphony No. 33, plus a suite of music from Aaron Copland's ballet Appalachian Spring, conducted by Andrew Grams. The Symphony is pleased to share this performance on Saturday, April 17th at 8 p.m. Now, Appalachian Spring had its premiere on October 30th, 1944. This was Copland's third contribution to ballet. Just a couple years earlier, in 1942, his second ballet, Rodeo, made its debut at a sold-out performance at the Metropolitan Opera House. Copland's first work for the stage was his cowboy ballet, Billy the Kid, from 1938. Taken together, these three ballets illustrate Copland's interest in Americana, specifically life on the frontier. In the 1930s and 40s, he would not only use his theme on the dance stage, but in other musical works, including an outdoor overture, music inspired by the folktale John Henry, El Salon, Mexico, and Prairie Journal. Appalachian Spring was created in collaboration with Martha Graham, a famed dancer and choreographer. Graham came to prominence in the 1920s when she revolutionized American dance through what is now known as the Graham technique. She dispensed with many traditional ballet movements, such as the elongation of the body, and instead devised gestures that focus on movements in the torso, including stomach spasms. She also used percussive, angular movements and had dancers not on their toes, but down on their knees or in sitting positions. The ensemble she formed in her name initially only included women, though by the time of Appalachian Spring came to include men. Copland had the following to say about Graham, and I quote, "Nobody else seems quite like Martha. She's so proud, so very much herself. And she's unquestionably very American. There's something prim and restrained, simple yet strong, about her which one tends to think of as American." End quote. Like Copland, Graham was interested in ballet scenarios that evoked frontier life. The commission for Appalachian Spring came from Elizabeth Sprague Coolidge, one of the most influential patrons of chamber music at the time. In their agreement, Copland and Graham would create a ballet about a half-hour in length using a chamber orchestra of no more than 12 musicians, though in the end, Copland employed 13. Now, Copland composed much of the music from afar, working while in Hollywood and in Mexico, so he relied on scripts and scenarios sent to him by Graham. She mailed him no less than 3 scripts, and only one had a title, House of Victory, while the others were simply titled Name, meaning it did not yet have a name. All of these scripts were filled with detailed descriptions of mood and characterization, but lacked precise or specific action on stage. Part of Graham's working method included reinterpreting her original scripts in any way she saw fit. So really, it may not have mattered what script or scenario Copland used, as Graham was likely to change it anyways. In the end, Appalachian Spring is an admixture of frontier life and American culture. The two primary characters are newlyweds, a husband and wife, who are settling into their home and their new life together. They are nervous, but also excited. A revivalist preacher warns them of hardships to come, but in the end, the ballet concludes with a couple in their home, at peace, and optimistic about their future. The title of the ballet, Appalachian Spring, came about very late, just weeks before the premiere. Graham found the phrase Appalachian Spring in a poem entitled The Dance by Hart Crane. In the poem, spring actually refers to a natural source of water, not the season. But, truth be told, for the rest of Copland's life, people would come up to him raving how evocative the music was of springtime in the Appalachian Mountains, even though the ballet has nothing to do with the Appalachian Mountains or springtime. C'est la vie. The ballet was a complete success, especially the music. And to capitalize on the music's popularity, Copland fashioned 2 suites for orchestra alone. One for the original instrumentation of 13 instruments, and one that he scored for full orchestra. On this performance by the North Carolina Symphony, you'll be hearing the Suite for 13 instruments. This suite encompasses the best parts of the ballet, leaving out only a few sections of music that are primarily choreographic in focus. As you listen, you may be led to think that Copland used American folk music for his melodies, but this is not true. Everything is original, except for one melody. That melody is arguably the most iconic part of the musical score, and it is the Shaker melody, Simple Gifts. Copland had long been fascinated by Shaker life, and at the time, Shaker melodies were not well known. Simple Gifts was an obscure melody that only was made famous because Copland used it. In the ballet and in the extracted suite, Simple Gifts is used as a theme in variations, building to a climactic presentation toward the end of the work. The opening and closing sections of the score are memorable for their directness and their feeling of serenity. Copland uses open intervals in the strings and piano, creating at first more atmosphere than melody. There are numerous sections of music that are vigorous and are clearly meant for energetic dancing. Rhythms are angular and accented, while tempos are brisk, bordering on the breathless. For his musical contribution, Copland was awarded the 1944 Pulitzer Prize in Music for Appalachian Spring. I hope you enjoy this timeless music. The other work on this program is Wolfgang Mozart's Symphony No. 33 in B-flat major. This symphony is infrequently performed, so this performance is special. In talking about the music, however, I think it's important that we take a step back and revisit Mozart, age 23, living in Salzburg in 1779. Now, Mozart was no stranger to Salzburg. It's his birthplace, after all, but he was trying to escape. In 1778, a year before he wrote the symphony, he was on tour with his mother, visiting cities such as Munich, Mannheim, and Paris. On this tour, Mozart was trying to elicit a more prestigious job offer to replace his current position working for the Archbishop in Salzburg. No offer came, and furthermore, Mozart's mother died suddenly, ending his tour early. So Mozart returned to Salzburg, mourning the death of his mother and bitter about his current work situation. Now, unlike later composers, such as Beethoven, who often had patrons who paid him an annuity but didn't ask for anything in return, thus allowing him to compose as he pleased, Mozart essentially composed to order. In a much talked about article from 1944, musicologist Neil Zaslaw called Mozart a working stiff. Whereas we would like to think of Mozart as a wunderkind who composed only according to his internal muse, the reality is that Mozart composed whatever was asked of him whenever someone offered him money to do so. A look through a symphonic catalog clearly indicates this approach to his composition. Symphonies were often reworked, reordered, reshuffled, added to, or shortened depending on the needs of the gig. So why did Mozart compose this symphony in B-flat major? What gig required this symphony to be composed? We don't know. Mozart's sister Nannerl kept a diary detailing much of their lives, but the summer of 1779 is missing in her accounting. Most likely, it was composed for the usual round of church, court, or private concerts, but it could also have acted as an overture for performances by a theater troupe. The original version of the symphony had only 3 movements. In 1781, however, Mozart did finally leave Salzburg for Vienna. There, perhaps in 1785 or so, he added a minuet to the symphony to please the tastes of the Viennese. So nowadays, the symphony is usually performed with all 4 movements. In the first movement, Mozart foreshadows his future Jupiter symphony by teasing us with that 4-note motto, do, re, fa, mi. What is interesting is that this motto isn't a primary theme of the first movement. It is actually introduced as a new theme in the development section. This deviates from standard composition practice, where the development is usually a place to further explore earlier ideas, not to introduce new ones. Nonetheless, after fiddling around with this new motto theme, he eventually returns to the original melodies and then ends the movement as expected. The second movement is songful and may remind listeners of the music of Schubert. However, we know it is Mozart in that he plays with our ears. Towards the end of the piece, he reprises the two melodies of the movement, but reverses their order. Mozart was always a little mischievous, and he loved subtle tricks like this. After the minuet and trio, we get a finale that bustles with energy. Mozart creates an atmosphere of intense activity by engaging the winds more than in previous movements, as well as by layering triplet figures against duple figures. Melodic ideas are plentiful, and this well-crafted movement ends with a broad smile. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of the works of Mozart and Copland that you'll hear on this weekend's performance. The concert streams on Saturday, April 17th at 8 p.m. and will be available for 20 days following. Thank you for your support of the North Carolina Symphony, and enjoy the performance.